I am incredibly excited to be making this video today. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can get a European visa to work and live in Europe. If you don't know me, my name is Ahmed Atifi. I've been a software engineer for the past 6 or 7 years actually, and I've relocated to Europe around 4 years ago from Egypt. I've been living in Europe ever since. I have done this visa process 3 times over the last 4 years. I've done it 2 times in Austria and I've done it 1 time in Portugal. And in this video, we're going to talk about that entire process so that if that's something that you want, you might be able to replicate what I did. Initially, when I recorded this video, it was quite long. It was about 16 or 17 minutes and it had 2 major points, the visa part and the work part. So I decided to break these into 2 videos. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the visa section of it. That being said, if you're not subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button to get notified when I release a new video. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. Alright, so now let's get into the juiciest section of this video. And let's be honest here, this is the real reason why you're actually watching this video. Once you've managed to actually convince a company to extend you a job offer, this is probably the trickiest part. I'm not saying it's the hardest, but it's just the trickiest because of how little you can actually control about this part of the process. Now, if you hold some kind of citizenship or residency somewhere in the EU, this section is probably not for you because you can basically work and live anywhere in the EU without having to worry about all of this. And I hate you. But if you're like me and you're from a country outside of the EU, buckle up and listen carefully. I can only talk about the process in Portugal and in Austria because these are the countries that I got a work permit in, but I've heard that the process is sort of similar in other European countries. Like I said earlier, the process from Egypt to Portugal was slightly different than the process from Portugal to Austria in just this one step. Before we jump into talking about the application for the work permit in both countries, let me explain real quick what that one extra step that I had to take was and why I actually didn't need to do that when I was moving from Portugal to Austria. To apply for a work permit, you have to go to a designated immigration entity in the country you are going to, and it cannot be done on your behalf for the most cases, so you have to be there physically. In Portugal, that entity is called the SEF, SEF, and in Austria, that entity is called the MA35. And so when I was moving from Egypt to Portugal, I needed this short-term visa, I believe it was called Type D, if I remember correctly, to be issued from the Portuguese embassy in Egypt so that I'm able to fly to Portugal and then from there apply for a work permit. This was valid for 90 days and it was quite easy to get. All I had to do was to show up in the embassy and give them all the documents, including things like my passport, my work contract, means of accommodation, criminal clearance certificate, and just self-identification documents in general. I honestly don't remember off the top of my head all the documents that I had to bring into the embassy, but it's just routine stuff for the most part. On the other hand, I didn't need to have that short-term visa issued when I was going from Portugal to Austria because I already had a Portuguese work permit, which allows you to travel within the EU without a visa, and it allows you to legally stay in any European country for 90 days. So I was able to go from Portugal to Austria and physically go to the MA35 and apply for a work permit. For US citizens and other countries who can stay in Europe for up to 90 days without a visa, you can probably, I think, skip the temporary visa part and just apply for the work permit right away, since you're already in the country. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the residence work permit itself. In Portugal, the work permit is issued for 1 year the first time you apply for it, and the good thing is that it's not tied to a specific employer, which means that you can change your job as many times as you'd like during that year. And this is a major bonus because it gives you free access to the Portuguese labor market for 1 whole year. In Austria, however, the work permit is known as the Rotweisrotkarte, and it's issued for 2 years the first time you apply for it, but it is tied to a specific employer. Which means that if you were to move to a different job before the 2 years are over, then you would have to repeat the process over again and then apply for a new Rotweisrotkarte again. Which isn't that bad, honestly. I did that, but you would have to wait 2 to 3 months and you would have to pay the application fees again. In Portugal, the application fees for applying for the Portuguese work permit is about 167 euros, if I remember correctly. And in Austria, the application for the work permit is about 200 euros. As a software engineer in both Portugal and in Austria, you qualify for a work permit for skilled workers and shortage positions. The good news is that as a skilled worker in a shortage position, you get some kind of prioritization over anyone else who is applying for a work permit but doesn't fit into that category. And this means that your papers will probably go through a bit faster than your other non-software engineer peers. However, this skilled worker status has to be proven somehow by an entity. That entity will need to be some kind of company or some kind of institute that wants to hire you. And for the entity to prove that, they have to go through a database of applicants that the immigration entity has and then prove that they couldn't find someone as good as you to fit that role. Now, the other good news is that it's actually a super thing to prove that, because this database is usually almost exclusively containing blue-collar candidates and a few, if any at all, actually software engineers, because software engineers don't usually register with these kinds of entities. And so you're in luck. Now, let's talk about the requirements for your work permit to get issued. In Portugal and in Austria, they're similar for the most part in the sense that you will need a job offer, means of sustenance, which is your salary and savings basically, and accommodation, which you will need to live. There's also one thing that you will need, and this is super painful for me to admit, a university degree related to the role somehow, if you're an international applicant applying for a work permit. Now, I know in previous videos I said that you probably don't need a degree to become a software engineer, and I still stand by that, but with a major caveat. Even though many tech companies have actually dropped the university degree requirement, in the sense that now they only rely on looking at your past experience, if you have any, and your interview performance to determine if you're a good fit for the role or not. However, immigration entities haven't caught up yet, and I don't think they will anytime soon. My reasoning behind that is that companies, especially companies in tech, tend to move and evolve at a way faster pace than, let's say, government entities or like immigration entities. And so tech companies were able to absorb this wave of self-taught skilled engineers when government entities or immigration entities still cannot. Immigration entities protocol still believes that to work as an engineer or become a software engineer, you need to have had studied computer science or engineering for it. And even so, you could possibly get an offer easily from a tech company without even going one day to college. It will still be challenging to get a work permit from a European country without that degree. Now notice that I said challenging, but not impossible. And let me tell you why. In Austria, for example, they have this point system where you need to meet at least 55 points in addition to getting a job offer to be eligible for a work permit as a skilled worker in shortage occupations. If you look at this diagram, it literally says that the completion of a program of studies with a minimum duration of 3 years at an institution of tertiary education will give you 30 points out of the 55. Now, that's a lot, especially given the fact that a year of experience, an entire year of experience outside of Austria is only worth 2 points. You can probably accumulate some points if you have like many years of experience, and if you can do things like prove your proficiency in English and German. And like I said, it's not important to get into that category without a degree, but I think it's significantly easier to do it with a degree. One thing that I think is worth mentioning though, the issuance of the short-term Type T visa that I needed to fly from Egypt to Portugal before I applied for the residence permit, it did require my university degree, and the CEF immigration entity in Portugal also did require a university degree. Now, I am no expert on this topic, every case is different, but it is just something to consider before dropping out of college. And once you've got all your documents sorted, you go through the immigration entity, provide the papers and pay the application fee. The process took roughly about the same amount of time in both Portugal and in Austria, about 2 to 3 months to get the residence permit. After that, it will be sent to your address that you stated in the application by post, and you're clear to work and live in Europe. If you've made it that far, congratulations. It is truly one of the best feelings to get that envelope in the mail and open up that envelope to find that residence or work permit inside that envelope. And I hope this was informative. If you still have any questions that I didn't answer, feel free to leave a comment or contact me on any of my socials. If you're on the fence on whether Vienna or Portugal life is worth it, feel free to click on either of those videos to take a sneak peek on what it's like to live there. That being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.